Hey, what's up everybody? I haven't done a review in a while and I figured this is a good opportunity to start my new series, Richard Matheson is Better Than You. And the reason I chose that name is because I think Richard Matheson is probably the best author I've ever read, and that's why I chose that name. I'm not trying to insult anyone with that name, but I think his writing speaks for himself. If you don't know who Richard Matheson is, he was one of the principal writers on The Twilight Zone, along with Charles Beaumont and Rod Serling. And I think that his writing was probably the best on the show. I like Charles Beaumont and I like Rod Serling, but the screenplays that Richard Matheson wrote were the best. I have the first review I'm going to do for a work by Richard Matheson, and it is his short story anthology Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And most of you have probably seen the Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with William Shatner. He sees something on the wing of the plane. He tries to convince everyone on the plane that there is a monster on there and they think he's just crazy. This is one of the stories in there, but my favorite story in this whole series is the story Dance of the Dead. I can't give too much away with that, but it's basically about mutated people in a kind of club, cafe slash strip club sort of environment, if that makes any sense. I really don't want to give away that story, but it's a really dark story, and it has kind of a hypnotic feel to it. What I mean by that is, while you're reading it, you kind of feel hypnotized like the main character. That might sound a little lame, but it actually got to me like that. Another great story in this series is Long Distance Call, which was also made into another Twilight Zone episode. And in it, a old lady who's pretty much in bed all day gets these weird phone calls. She doesn't know what's going on with that. If you've ever seen the Twilight Zone episode, it's really awesome. Another great story that you probably never heard of is The Distributor, and it's basically about this guy who goes around this suburban neighborhood and pretty much tries to just create chaos, and he does it so easily. It's a lot like The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. I know Rod Serling wrote that, but this one reminded me a lot of that. And this is basically his best horror short stories, so I definitely recommend this one. Not a lot of you know this, but Richard Matheson was Stephen King's biggest influence, and you can really tell by the writing that this is where Stephen King picked up his writing style. So if you like Stephen King, you'll love Richard Matheson, probably even more than Stephen King, which I do. The difference between Stephen King, I'd say, and Richard Matheson is that the writing is pretty much the same, where they start out with ordinary characters in ordinary situations, but then they kind of, halfway through the story, it's like a dark spin on it. And the only difference that Stephen King has, I would say, is that he kind of goes off on a tangent sometimes and starts writing about random stuff that has nothing to do with the story. And I seriously think Richard Matheson is a better short story writer than novel writer, but I think his novels and his short stories are awesome, and I definitely recommend this one. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.